And I don't have much of a hour and 30-minute long presentation, so I'm going to offload what I don't have onto you, and we're going to kind of like do this together, because this is uncomfortable, the like one to many, and so if I feel like we're all kind of like just in a chat together, that's more comfortable for me, and I think is a little more in line with the principles of platform cooperativism. So anyways, what's going to happen here? I did make some notes. I'm going to kind of explain what this tool that I want to share with you is, where it comes from, and why I think it's interesting and important. I'm going to is this working now? Test. Oh, cool. All right. I'm going to show you. I'm going to tell you where this tool where I stole this tool from. I'm going to tell you why I think it's important. I'm going to show you kind of how it works, and then we're going to play test it, and it's going to be kind of a live demo. But this is not a tech tool. This is not a computer. This is not a digital. This is like sticky notes on a whiteboard, and there's actually no sticky notes, or the sticky notes I have are like comically small and aren't really going to work. So it's just going to be a whiteboard, which might be uncomfortable for some, might be really comfortable for others. And then I'm gonna like get y'all to. Actually, I'm gonna change it up right now. Let's do this. Does anyone want to say like what it made you interested? Like what about the words on the screen in the Unconference thing where it's like, oh, I want to go and see that, and that'll help me kind of frame what's going on. Yeah, I have to give you a mic though.
Hi, I'm Laura. I'm co-founder of a cooperative that aims to be a mass members cooperative, and we are all online. And so very interested about how to build culture as we grow from our current 100 members to hopefully tens of thousands.
All right.
Respecting the values that we have of the early active members.
Awesome. So that's perfect, because this is something that I've started a co-op which is very small, and we're all disparate and offline. So this is an offline tool, but it is something that can be translated online. It's essentially a set of principles and ideas that you can adapt. Does anyone else want
to? My name is Amina Rose. I'm a student, and I'm writing my senior thesis about cooperatives with a focus on how co-ops might be a tool for community building with diverse membership, focusing on race and class specifically. So I'm interested in trust building and community building in diverse member populations.
Awesome. Do you want to pass over there? Did you?
Yeah. Well, I was attracted to this because I think a lot about democracy and about how a lot of the failures of American democracy, and I've been coming to find that my consensus with that is that we are failing as a democracy because we do not have democratic institutions from the ground up, and in order to change our politics, we must change the way that we interact with our corporations and I guess our platforms.
Awesome. And I think that this will be interesting for you as thinking of this in sort of fractal, like the fractal of I have to change how I interact with myself as a person, but also like if we're going to have mass democracy on a huge scale, we have to be doing that in our smallest units, in our families, in our groups, in our activist things, in our organizing, in our businesses. And this is something that can kind of be applied. I've applied it as a personal tool. I've applied it as something I do with like friends and up to like groups and seeing, and maybe it can scale. I don't know. It's all. So hopefully we'll touch on that stuff too. Go ahead.
Yeah, I work on a universal basic income project, and I just realized that while working on this. Nothing that we do actually has any impact if we're not building culture. That's really the only way to affect change, I think.
Does that resonate with anyone? You want to like, yeah, I love the twinkle fingers. There's a cultural thing that I use in a lot of groups that I'm with is when you're like into something someone is saying, you can just like twinkle your fingers, which I believe is sign language for applause. So it's sort of a silent applause that doesn't interrupt, whoever's talking, but you can kind of like give them that visual feedback. And that remember that because we'll tie that into this whole thing. Does anyone else wanna speak to why they were interested in coming? Oh, look at this self-directed group of people.
Cool, thanks. So the suspense is building. I can't wait to figure out what the tool is. My sense is that at the beginning and end of the day, we are social creatures. We're social animals. So it is really the underpinning of everything that we do. So I think that culture really is what gives birth to all of our other abstractions and concepts, and how we cohere our shared realities together. And where there's cultural gaps is where things potentially start to fall apart.
That's beautiful. I love it. It really resonates with me. I've been getting into this idea, which I think I pulled from one of the members of Inspiral, who was talking about cultural technology. So there's a lot of talk about digital technology in this event, obviously, but the cultural technology is also a very important thing, and that's to build the suspense just a little bit more, is something that this thing that maybe I have is going to like talk about. Does anyone else wanna make some comments? Pass the talking stick.
Yeah, so I've been thinking of this in a lot of areas of my life. I work at a worker-owned cooperative, which is totally distributed, so we're not all in the same room together and thinking about building culture that way. I also participate in a lot of communities like the Boston Burner community, the Boston Sacred Harp community, which don't have any leaders. Like there's no official leadership, and so thinking about how to build community in those groups and kind of come to a set of shared values has been difficult. So I'm interested in tools.
Yes, and I think that the something that I've been plugging at recently is this idea of kind of the third way. We have our rigid hierarchies, the triangles. We're all familiar with that. But then in the we don't have any leaders. There's no leaders. This is a free and flat organization, which has if you've the tyranny of structurelessness, I think is something if you haven't read is a great read to show how in a group where things when you don't make things explicit, when you don't make cultural practices explicit, you actually you empower hidden hierarchies and hidden kind of cultural crappiness. Where the people like me who maybe I have a lot of time and I can in the duocracy I'm doing a lot of stuff, so I know how to I talk to this person and I know how that person goes, and then I can get stuff done, and also I'm super comfortable talking in front of a room of people, and I'm terrified but I can really hold it together right now. That gives me I have the social capital, which then gives me power and then creates power imbalance. And if there's anyone else that wants to speak to what drew you into this room.
Thank you. My name is Antti, and for me, I think the title was actually longer in the voting tool, maybe building culture without consensus. Yeah, and that was maybe one of the key terms. So also, I've been interested in this, as you said, that alternatives to the hierarchy or the whole structurelessness. And we, with the 15 people team, have been trying different ways of self-management and how to make decisions using advice process, different kind of techniques, but not. It always feels better if reaching the consensus, but sometimes it feels very slow. So I was very curious to hear what are people's approaches here about what's the right level of how close to consensus should you aim?
Great. And yes, so consensus, who here is familiar with consensus decision making? Okay, so consensus decision making in a nutshell is we're ordering a pizza. This whole room, let's say we're ordering pizza, and we need to come to a decision on pizza toppings, but we don't actually need to get everyone to agree on what the best topping is. We kind of just need to get everyone to agree on being okay with the pizza toppings that are there. So we're gonna say well, I can't eat anchovies, or I hate them, so I'm gonna block any proposal that involves pizza with anchovies. So the group then says, okay, well, we don't need anchovies, so how about these toppings? And eventually we get there. So if you've eaten pizza with a group of people and ordered it, you're experienced in consensus decision making. And typically what happens in consensus decision making is, or what a pattern I've seen quite often in groups, is that we spend a lot of time, we have a problem, and we need to find a solution to that problem. And so a committee is formed, and all this work goes into figuring out what the solution is, and we have deliberation, and people give their feedback, and a lot of that feedback kind of comes in the form of, well, what if in 10 years this thing happens and there's this weird edge thing that goes on, and all of a sudden this decision we make blow it, it's just fire and brimstone. And so we're creating decisions that are looking at these weird potentials that may never occur and are not actually a problem that's happening. I see some nodding as if you may have experienced this. And so we finally come to a decision after strong arming and pleading, and it's been rough, and maybe that decision in 3 months we start to look at it and we're like, whoa, this doesn't actually work. And everyone's just like, it doesn't matter, who cares? We're not going back. We did it. We made the decision. We are not going back into that hellscape of consensus creation. So there's sort of my pitch where consensus cannot work sometimes, or is not the ideal way to make some decisions. So let's see. Let's try and transition this. Is there any more things that people have thinking around? Maybe even the idea of we're talking about culture creation. Maybe we should get clear on what is culture. Does anyone have a good feel like you have a good little pithy culture is just let's just yell what's a thing of cult, what is something that when I say culture you think of life. Go say that again. Life Mike or Mike life. Culture is life. Okay. Yes.
I read this thing about culture being like a mushroom, where it's all interconnected underneath the earth, and it spreads out a lot of places, and then you see these little mushroom heads that pop up, and you think that, oh, this is culture, this is a mushroom, but really there's all these interconnectedness, and it goes into tree trunks, and it connects to other plants. That's it.
Yeah, I like that.
Mushroom at the End of the World. If you want to read it, it's a good book.
I think culture is a set of patterns that give shape to typically give shape to or hold together a social situation. So it could be a group
or an organization or even like a family or just any kind of social system maybe. So a set of patterns that gives shape to a social system. If that's too abstract, I apologize.
No, that's awesome. It's like culture is the glue. Let's go to this gentleman first. You've already spoken, I don't know. And then you can go next. I'm trying to do a little progressive stack here. All right, go ahead.
I wanted to second that and also add that it adds the ability to persist and reproduce those social orders over time so that they last for a long time, not a single moment, but they can persist.
This may not be pithy enough, but I really appreciate Ernest Becker's work around culture, that it's really a denial of death, or practices and rituals that help us sort of be okay with our own impermanence. So.
Right, I see some play between these two. Sort of culture is the thing that binds groups together, is a glue that turns a random group of people into a cohesive unit, into something that's greater than their whole, and it extends the group as an idea into the future, even when the component pieces, it's sort of like all the cells in your body, have died 7 years ago, and you're a completely new form of yourself, but you're still the same person. Your culture of the self persists, even though the component pieces may have moved on. So that's great. That's better than I could have ever come up with. Thank you all for co-creating that with me. So what the hell am I actually going to be talking to you about? As I promised, the background of this is I worked with a syndicate of radical alternative schools a little while ago called Agile Learning Centers, ALC. You should certainly look them up. They're pretty cool. They do curriculum-less K through 12. Essentially, they're a pedagogy. They're creating a pedagogy for K through 12 education that really focuses on building culture and space so that children can just like follow their interests out and just explore what they're interested in and learn that way. And so a lot of it has to do with creating agency. And I would say, who here went to public school? Okay, so or I guess also private school. Who went to school? Who went to a school? So we all have this sort of, I would say, a common thing that we all went through, which was like there were grades. You were segregated by age. You learn through a prescriptive method that, if we go back in time, and I'm no expert, I just listen to people in this organization. This comes from the Prussian model. A lot of what we see as school, what we understand as school, comes from this Prussian model. And the Prussians were like, our soldiers, we keep telling them to do things, and then they're like, that's not a great idea. I'm not going to go over that hill, so I'm just going to hang out over here. So they had a high degree of agency. And the Prussians were like, we need to figure out a way to make agency not a thing because it's not useful. And it really isn't useful to have agents, like people with agency, when in an industrial setting, or if in the military. So agency isn't really that ideal, and it hasn't been ideal in the Industrial Revolution around, you just need to like pull the crank, and that's it. But now we're in a space where like we really need agency, and that's what ALC is kind of. That's their new twist on education, is increasing agency. And so what this tool does is it has a lot to do with agency. Agency to change culture. So if you've ever worked in a sort of a more rigid group where there's certain sets of rules, you may have experienced this like thing where you're like, this rule doesn't make sense. How in the world would I change it? Have you ever like had a protocol or rule in a group that you've been a part of that you couldn't? There was no like means to change that rule. maybe a few of you. Yeah. So the way that this thing works, and I'm just kind of like flying by the seat of my pants here. The way that this thing that I'm introducing to you works, it starts with that awareness. So awareness is the first thing. I'll put it up on the board in a second. I'm gonna actually start priming the board. What I'm gonna ask y'all to do is think of awarenesses in the groups that you're a part of, and just like be aware of something that could be done better, an opportunity or a problem that you are aware of. And if you could kind of like glom together, let's try and generate 4 awarenesses. And I want these to be like real things, because we've got like an hour still, right? Like when do we get out of here? Like 4 o'clock or something? Does anyone know? 4:45. Wow. Oh my gosh. Okay. So let's as a team, as a group that is creating culture as we speak. Let's come up with 4 awarenesses that are like real to you, to the groups that you're in. And to do this, I would like you to self-organize into 4 clusters, and just like share, like, hey, this is a thing in my group, and just share something. And if you don't have something, that's cool, whatever. But just sorry. Save the world. Let's bring it like a little more like down into like. Oh. Well, no, it's a good joke, because let's focus it in on like you're part of a group, an organization. What is something that you are aware of in that group, and maybe like even like here in this like the platform cooperative conference. What's something that you're aware of that's a problem or an opportunity? You know, they're kind of the same thing. Like generate. Does that make sense? Do we think we can try to do that? Like get together and just like share.
Would it be helpful to define like an awareness as a challenge or a problem?
Sure.
I don't know if it's helpful.
Oh, you've already got a mic.
So you want us to generate 4 awarenesses that we think are shared awarenesses?
No, 4 awarenesses that are real to you in your group or organization.
Just individually, personally.
Personally. And so we're going to generate there's like 20 of us here, and we're going to generate 4 as a group. So we're all going to generate like 1, and then as a group you're going to be like, ooh, that one's really juicy. And because there's going to be 4 groups, and the groups each produce kind of like talk to each other and get 1 out of the group, then we'll have 4. Does that make sense in terms of great? Okay. Yes, let's talk examples. So in the school, there's an Agile Learning Center in East Harlem, and they have a room called the Red Room because it's painted red. And there was an awareness that there's ants in the Red Room. This is a problem. There's ants in the Red Room. And we're not talking about like what the solution is yet. We're not in the solution space. We're just into the problem space. So here's another problem. I am in my cooperative. We don't have a clear path to membership, and that's a little big. But you know, like we don't like. We haven't defined what a member is. So there's a problem. Let's see. In this room, like problem, all the chairs are facing the same direction. Yeah. So I think that yeah. We good? Does that feel all right? So let's self-organize into 4 groups. Yes.
Do you want us to also self-organize how we pick 1 in the group?
Yeah, that's a great challenge. I have no idea. How do you come to consensus around what the one is? So in your group, share a problem, like an awareness that you have about an organization or group that you're in, and then collectively in your little group, choose one of those to bring to the front. And then we're gonna like workshop them. And by workshopping, we'll learn this little game I have. All right. Go. Be into groups. And maybe like introduce yourselves, and we got plenty of time, so it's like spacious. I see like two. There's like two groups forming. Maybe we could do. There's like four. Okay. There's like up there, over there. Okay. These three. So different sizes. Let's do three groups. Okay. There's three groups. Does that feel good? There's three groups. We don't have to be that. We don't have to be that precise. This is super loose. Super loose. Yeah, come on over.
Less, right? Three groups.
I'm seeing three groups. This looks great. It's good enough. Let's not let perfect be the enemy of whatever. Who's got the mic? I'm gonna jump in the rush before I go. I think we should do voting for the final results. Oh, do we need the mic? Yeah. Is it off?
So my awareness, one positive position is like that I have been passionately and took very care of having for my understanding, high degree of diversity, so that the speakers, which I saw in the panels, quite silent things, right? So that is the awareness I appreciate in this event. Like something for me positive. So, but when I see this implementation practice, I don't know what. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, I'm here to gently but definitely include. The other group is already kind of included, so there's some subtle no cheating. Settle down. I heard I was caught in the tail end of a response, which might be an interesting wrench to throw into my whole presentation. Yeah, really, to really make me sweat. So, but now it's just like pick one thing that we can kind of play test.
So technically there's kind of one person who's going to do a problem if they're the person who thinks that the whole house out and they're there 2 or 3 days, so it's kind of like who would head up for this and
Revealing the invisible. Revealing what was not seen or
there's kind of
yeah. Let's go with the positive one. Right? Although for the practice of and I think it does encapsulate what we know today. And basically the awareness that should be some kind of common purpose. Well, not the awareness of there being a problem. So we can so anyone block that message? Well, how does it say it? What is it we're actually we all know it? What does it say? What's the awareness?
So I worked at a collectively run music venue and I thought that one of our most recent problems was this exercise.
Don't you think we
we
have
need to clean our bathroom.
I was going to say, instead of going with that sentence, I became aware that
I'm the part of
But now after the last like an hour ago, working on this co-op team to do it.
your idea.
Like the email thread with like mess everyone up.
Okay.
It's terrible.
Yeah, good. Yeah, it sounds like it reflects. That's a problem.
I'm going to start stepping in the front, making this.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that works. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
do you want to write the sentence?
Yes, okay.
What? That better than that.
No, you're so great. And awareness is lack of
It's one of the
yeah, I'm like cool as the fruit.
No, I don't think so. I don't think she's aware of what I didn't like know very much about it, but even like afraid of not being able to follow it. Flushing toilet,
Yeah,
which is all seems.
it's I'm gonna use this room.
All right. All right, group in the back. Thank you, everyone, for participating in that. So what we're going to do now is just get one person to take this mic, turn it on, and then share the awareness. And y'all are going to go first. Oh. Okay. You want me to do it?
Yes, but
It has to be perfectly succinct the first time, so no pressure.
he's teasing you.
Think.
Yes.
I think. Okay. We have the awareness that the organizers of this conference cared much about having diverse speakers, diverse panels. So, including, how did my colleague said, invisible voices or?
Typically, a lot of times either certain voices or a lot of work is not recognized and is invisible and is, may not be well represented or acknowledged and therefore valued. So in sociological parlance, we would say render the invisible visible. So here at the conference, the concrete example would be having people represent different populations that might not otherwise appear.
Okay, that's great, because that's going to be a challenging one. Hold on. That's great. That's great. Because that's going to be a kind of challenging one to move through this, but this is we'll see. So let's move on to the next group.
So the awareness that we decided on was I'm part of a collectively run music venue, and recently we had a problem come up where we realized we have to clean our bathrooms, and we were trying to figure out like our bathrooms really need to be cleaned, like a deep clean, like more than just the staff does at the end of the night. So we're trying to figure out whether we should hire like an outside cleaning company or pay one of our collective members to do it, like with that those resources, or if we should like have a group of volunteers do it together. So there's a awareness of a problem.
Great, and I've formulated that into our bathrooms need a deep clean. So that's the as if we were this collective, and we're kind of in the meeting now, and we're like, what are people aware of? Our bathrooms are dirty. They need a deep clean. Okay, great. Thank you.
I think it's so great that you're aware that your bathrooms need a deep clean. Like that's great. That's beautiful. I know, right? Awareness. Okay. So what? So I'm trying to think if I can synthesize the different stories into one, but my brain is frying right now. So I'm just going to tell my piece. I am aware that in my organization, there is subtle power imbalances that play out in terms of certain qualitative cues over time, in the form of one person assuming more power than others, specifically the president of a board, really feeling identified with the role of president in such a way that it distorts power in what is otherwise a consensus-based decision-making process. So that means taking up more space in meetings. That means, in terms of time and talking, it means really controlling how the agendas are constructed. In terms of influence, so I guess the influence is a little outsized, and it's partly has to do with, I think, his identification with the role of president, seeing it as something more than the other people on the team, and what was the other thing? I'm totally blanking now. This is embarrassing. Okay, that's good enough. Okay.
All right, I think I've made up a word here, but I've synthesized that into, and this is part of getting good at using this kind of tool. I've written it as work is not being done equitably. What is the word I'm looking for? Equitably. And I've given you a really avant-garde spelling over here. You're welcome.
I would actually reframe that a little bit because
Yes, please.
it's not by virtue of the participants in the system. It's actually one person has oversized influence relative to the others in the group, and so it's a distorting. So maybe that's a way of rewording it.
So it's a power imbalance. Now this particular problem might not work when it's like one person in a group, and there's something that I'll touch on, sort of like the limitations of this. You're bumping up against the limitations of this because that's one individual that actually needs the group to come and support them, because, and this is why I'm framing the awareness like this, the work is not being done equitably, and it's not that the other people in the group aren't doing the work, but they aren't able to do the work because one person is hoarding it all, and so this is just this in my kind of like amateur facilitation mind, coming to that person saying, you're taking up all the space, you're being a bad actor, is like maybe not the best way to go about doing this, going about addressing it. It might be better to say, we see you taking on, you're doing all the scheduling, you're doing all the agenda setting, you're doing you're doing so much of the talking in the meeting, like you're taking on so much. We want to help you by reducing how much you're taking on. So you're and push back against me here. That's just like my sort of Machiavellian strategy in flat organizations way of addressing something like that.
Yeah, I agree that would be a more advantageous way to address it. The goal, though, I thought was to raise the awareness, or like really define what we're aware of in the group. And so
Yes.
what you wrote just does not capture what I said. That's all. That's all
Sure.
I wanted to point out.
And you're absolutely correct. But for the purpose of this exercise, I'm going to change it to this so we can illustrate a little bit better, as a way. So I apologize for changing that, but great. So thank you all. Yes. This is that is very, very true, because I get to be the authoritarian at the front of the room. That's not going on the board. Yeah, if only these chairs were in a circle, things might be different in here. So you may have noticed that I've created a board with 4 columns that have titles on them. This is if you ever hung out with the cool kids in the startup world, you may know the term Kanban board. It's a Japanese word for sticker board. So what we're going to do is a little group imagination that this is a Post-it note, and that this board is on the wall in our group space. And some of you have said that you're in virtual spaces, so maybe there's a virtual representation of this board. And there's lots of tools that can make that a reality. Trello comes to mind. So what we have here is the first column, awareness. This is how things enter into this board. Oh, and the board has a name. This is the Community Mastery Board. You can change the name if you want. I don't care. It's copy left or whatever. And the Community Mastery Board is the tool that sits inside of a meeting, and we are currently in this meeting, and it's called the Change-Up Meeting. And the Change-Up Meeting is something that happens, and this is where you can start taking notes on getting exactly how this thing works. The Change-Up Meeting occurs in cycles, and at regular cycles, and that's very important because you want to create a space where problems, awarenesses, can be raised. And what this does is it frees up your other spaces to not deal with that. So when you're having your Monday morning, like, what are we going to do this week meeting, and someone's like, you know what, this thing is bothering me, and everyone's like, oh, we're about to get derailed, this is going to be an hour-long meeting all of a sudden, you can say, oh, change up is here, is on at this time, and that's the place for that concern. So this is a tool that you can use to alleviate other meetings from being derailed by like necessary things to talk about that are just like not on topic. So the change up meeting exists, and you when this is a physical board, you can go in and be like, oh boy, our bathroom is disgusting, and you just write a sticky note and pop it up on the board right when it hits. Or if you're in a distributed group, you realize something's going on, and you just go on whatever platform you've decided to make the community mastery board on, and you just add an awareness, and it just like you get it right there. So we're in the change up meeting. We've agreed to meet once a month, and we're going to go through. This is our first change up meeting, so we're going to take a look at the awarenesses that have been generated. And this might be, you might just be like, if you're facilitating this meeting, you might just say, okay, does anyone have any awarenesses? And we're going to pretend like 3 people shouted these 3 awarenesses out. And now we're going to go through and we're going to start to move these to the right. That's the goal. We want to take our awarenesses and turn them into mastered pieces of solutions. We want to convert them into solutions and then master those solutions. So bear with me. I'm gonna. All right. So an awareness creates usually has a solution. There's some way to deal with that solution. So we implement the solution. We implement a solution to an awareness that we've seen, and then because we meet every month, we can review. Once we can, I'm losing myself. Excuse me. I'm trying to give you an overview of what happens. So we're essentially going. We have awarenesses. We come up with solutions, and we implement them. We just try them out, and then when we revisit every month, or in our cycle, we revisit those solutions and we say, are those solutions working? And if the implemented solution is not working, we throw it out and we try something new. But if it is working, we move it to practice. And that's like practice in both senses of the word. It's something that we are practicing, like meditation, and it is something that we are practicing like riding a bike. We're like getting good at doing this cultural practice that solves an awareness. And then eventually we master that. It becomes second nature to the group. We don't have to remind each other, hey, we don't eat. So like in the example of ants in the red room, the implemented solution was don't eat food in the red room. And at first you have to remind people, hey, we're trying this thing out. We're not going to eat food in the red room. And then eventually you do it less and less and less, and it's basically integrated, and you've practiced it, and everyone's like, yeah, no one eats food in the red room. We never do that. And then it's mastered. And what that process allows you to do is you create a rule or a cultural practice that the community has empowered, has imbibed with power, not because it was handed down from on high, but from like a consensus meeting, from a governance meeting, but because it's kind of bubbled up. And yeah, go ahead. Sorry? Yeah. Well, yeah. People stopped eating in the mythology of this story. Yes, the ants went away. And if we implemented that and the ants didn't go away, so remember my story about consensus. If we had gone through a crazy process to be like, we we've done the research, and the committee has determined that we are no longer going to be able to eat food, and we've consented on that decision, and now that is a rule, and then the ants don't go away. Like, whoops, we just went through this whole process to do that. But in this case, we're going to come back next month and say, hey, did this thing get solved? Are the ants gone? And we'll be like, yeah, we all stopped eating in there and the ants didn't go away. So that solution actually doesn't work. And we're able to just like throw it out. Yes. Great question. So we're going to do that right now. We're going to start with the easy one, which is, oh yes. The question is, how do you move from an awareness to an implementation without consensus? And so we're gonna model that right now. So everyone, get into the zone. We're like a collective, and we have this bathroom that is filthy, and we need to implement a solution. So I'm going to play the role of the facilitator because I just happen to be standing up here. Our awareness is the bathroom needs a deep clean. And what we do now is we generate ideas, rapid fire. How are we going to, what's an idea for getting this bathroom clean? Just raise your hand and shout it out. Yeah. Sorry, I'll point to you and then shout it out. Schedule for everybody to clean the bathroom. Okay. What was the next one? Pay a cleaning service. Next one. Leave it prettier than when you came in. Next one.
Hire a cleaning co-op.
Hire a cleaning co-op. Ooh, that's a little adaptation of this one. Okay. Now, as the facilitator, and again, we're gonna make believe here. Imagine that we have a certain degree of trust, and that's the key of this thing. And that's kind of you have to trust me, the facilitator, and you have to trust each other. And the beauty is the stakes are pretty low. And so like when I'm thinking about how I want to I heard these things and we want to implement something. Now, hiring somebody is a pretty big implementation. That's like paying money, but leaving it cleaner than you found it. That's something that we can try. Can we agree to try leaving it cleaner than you found it? Not in a music venue. Well, so let's make believe in this scenario. This is just like the bathroom in our, like over here. There's a bathroom over here. It's gross. We come in here all the time to, I don't know, sit in rows facing the front. And so can we agree to give that a try? No. Who said no? Yes. What's your concern there?
Well, me putting the role here of not creating consensus, I don't think it's going to work.
So she does not believe it is going to work, right? But can we try it for a month? Can we just try for 1 month to give it a shot? Great, perfect. See, that is a power of this tool, is that we can just give it we can just try it out. Like you can disagree all you want, and we don't really have to get into it in the meeting because we're going to be trying it out for a month. So we're gonna move our sticky note, imagine, and just be like, leave it cleaner. And just we
try it for a week instead.
Yeah, we could do it.
Okay, so let's retroactively change this imagination space and say that we do we have our change up meeting once a week, every Friday. We get together and we look at this board. So we've created that. We've implemented this change. We're gonna try and leave it cleaner than we found it. 1 second, and we can agree to that because we know we're going to return to this a week later and see. So the person who doesn't think it's going to work, you can go out for the next week and you can lobby people. You can say, hey, listen, this is a silly idea. We shouldn't be doing this. We got to do something different. We got to, do my idea. But everyone else can say, well, can you just try? Can you just try this? So we're doing that, and now a week has passed, and we've returned, and I'm actually a different person facilitating because it's good to mix your facilitators up. And before I get started, I want to, we can keep doing the microphone pass around thing if I was stronger. Wait, the light has to turn green, and then you're allowed to speak.
Okay. So I think one of the problems that organizations typically face is they might try to implement something, but it may not actually be the actual best solution. So are there occasions where you say you will try different solutions and you will compare the results at the end, like an experimental approach?
Yeah. So this is kind of akin to coming up with a rule that has like a sunset. So we're going to say we're going to try this thing for 3 months and see if it works. We're going to pilot it, but it's sort of all baked into this system. And I want to be very clear. Like, I'm kind of giving you like the framework of an idea. You can adapt this. You can create, and you can actually use the tool to say like, let's implement every idea. We have an implementation where ideas through the community mastery board get tried out for 3 weeks. Like that could be, you could implement that as a practice for the board itself, sort of this meta organizing for the board. You could have an awareness like, we are not picking ideas that are the best. But anyway, so let's to address that. Oh, do you have a question too? Go ahead. Let's.
Maybe this is better to address at the end, but so far it sounds like this is still consensus. It's just lower stakes consensus.
Yes.
Which is an important distinction, but I'm curious if there's actually a different threshold for these decisions.
The threshold here is a facilitation technique called sense of the meeting, where you're going to trust me to get the sense of the meeting. And so when an idea comes out, I see it, I kind of gauge. I'm like, oh, people don't really seem into that. What's another idea? Oh, people kind of like perked up when that happened. I'm gonna pick that one. You're gonna empower me to be an authoritarian for a moment, and just say like, no, we're gonna go with this. Like I've decided that we're gonna go with this.
And you kind of feel out whether people should have veto power over that.
Yeah. And then if like the conversation is getting heated and getting on, like there is something else that I will try. Realize now that we're kind of like dwindling, our time is dwindling. There is a you can kind of when there is a lot of disagreement about something you can implement, even though it's low stakes, even though we're only doing it for a week. If there's like a lot of disagreement, you can convene a body to really talk about like who's interested in talking about this. Okay, cool. You guys are going to meet on Tuesday and like really dig into this. So we're 1 week from we've moved forward in time 1 week. We're back at our change-up meeting, and now rather than just going through the awarenesses, we're going to say, okay, cool. So we implemented leaving it cleaner. Has that solved the problem that our bathroom is really dirty?
Probably not.
No, it hasn't. Okay, cool. Well, let's move that. Let's trash that sticky note. Boom. That implementation did not work. What is another implementation? Blah blah blah. Let's hire a cleaning service. Let's hire someone internally to do it. Implement that. We come back a week later. That's working. Like somebody, like it feels good, and like now we can practice. Now we can start to build a position that is somebody gets paid $15 to or $60, whatever's fair, to pay to do the deep clean, and if it keeps working and everyone's cool with it, like that becomes a mastered. That can become mastered. So let me know. Was that too much of a leap? in the back.
You can just repeat me. What
Yeah.
is the mastery? Like, so you got to the okay, fine. Sorry, here. All right, I'll stop yelling. Okay, so you talked about something that's tried out. If it works, becomes a practice. If it continues to work, so where does the mastery? What happens with the mastery column?
The mastery is the difference between practice and mastery is a distinction in how the community feels about is this like fully integrated? Are we? Is it like we? So I guess the difference in like paying someone within the group to do the bathroom is like once we feel like, oh, this is kind of going well, we're practicing it, and then once it's gone on for weeks and weeks and weeks, and we've like institutionalized it, and it's become like it's like great, we've put a budgetary item in the we put an item in the budget for a year of cleaning. That's like solidly in the culture of the organization. And this example is a little like procedural and not as cultural. Yeah.
So like, if mastery is achieved, the problem as identified will never reoccur. It'll never come up again as a sticky note on the awareness column. Does that make sense? Whereas if a problem recurs or changes form, maybe part of the problem was solved, like the bathroom is cleaner.
Right.
But there's these other issues now with the hiring, who got hired, and there's other
right.
that gets raised as an awareness at a later meeting.
Exactly. So
right.
so
it iterates like that.
You can raise a new awareness, but what I think is the power here is that once something has become mastered, you can bring in new people and be like, okay, cool. Here's how our culture works. This is how we do things, and if you see a problem, you just make an awareness. You make us aware. And the problem could be something in the mastery column is not serving our needs anymore. In fact, you could pull a thing from mastery and bring it back over here and make it an awareness and say like, oh, this whole bathroom cleaning person causes it has like a hierarchy problem. But the ideal is that because we're iterating through, you'd have caught that. After like 4 weeks, you'd be like, hey, I noticed that people are really grumbling about this, and it doesn't feel good. So maybe we should revisit the awareness. Does that make sense? Okay. So let's see. Let's. Do you want to try and? Do you feel this that I've shared this well enough to like you kind of get what's going on, or do we want to just like ask questions? Like, do we want to like give me some visual feedback here? Do we want to ask questions about specific things, or do we want to like go through one more? Go through one more. One more. Okay, cool. Let's try. Let's try this positive one. Let's see what. So the organizers of our event. So let's pretend now that we're the Platform Cooperativism group, and we meet once a week at Change Up to play with our community mastery board. And one of the awarenesses is, wow, this time we made the invisible visible. We did a really good job with that. How can we implement something so that we continue to do a good job of that? Do we have any ideas? Raise your hand and I'll point at you. Like, how could we? Let's pretend that this sort of happened. There was no intentionality behind it. We just like realized like, oh wow, we did a really like it. People are giving us feedback saying like, you made the invisible visible. How can we? This might be too challenging. I don't know. Yeah. Where's the here? Take mine.
All right. So
So I'll give an example. So I was at a meeting where we had to figure out which applicants to sort into different groups that would then be eligible for a program. And we had one person who stopped and said, you know, only 30% of the applicants were men. You know, keep that in awareness. I mean, it didn't say it like that, but when you're choosing your groups, make sure they're not terribly gender skewed, so that the men weren't overrepresented proportionally to the number of applicants because they're, you know, work me. So you could do things like proportionality, like look and see how many slots, like do you have a panel entirely of white men only, or are there voices that are underrepresented that should be at the tables? So having a procedure in place that would double check this composition of speakers, for example, and maybe showing it to other groups for suggestions, right? That's another tactic that some groups use. They run it through other committees first before finalizing their decisions. So it could be gender, it could be race, it could be particular views represented.
All right, so that's great. So we can think about this tool now, like clear your imagination, recreate a space where we are running we are like putting together a conference, and we start months out. We are creating awarenesses. We need to make sure that the invisible is visible. So let's implement a practice of reviewing gender ratio, reviewing racial ratio, and we could kind of adapt this process to say, you know, we come back and say, how's our ratio doing? Are we doing this? Like, you know, you in this section of I've never organized a conference. These sets of presentations, what's the ratio like? And you could just be like, well, I knew this was gonna come up, so here's the ratio, and so we could use this as a tool to like checklist certain things, like are we meeting these certain things, and maybe the like implementation, practice, mastery doesn't actually make sense in that particular scenario. And also understand that you could use this tool, you could have an awareness that like this could just like maybe an awareness doesn't need a solution. So like in a group in this group, we had an awareness that just sat in awareness always, that said if you are not actively fighting oppression, you are working to strengthen it, or something a little more pithy than that. And so that's just something like we know we're going to come back to this board every week, so we're going to just mention that, like, hey, make sure you're still aware. Are we still aware of this? Cool. Like, let's talk about like dirty bathrooms now. And I think that and like so work is not being done equally. So this is sort of a backwards way of like getting the dude who's the president to like give up some power. What could we implement to you know, gently take power away from this person? Like, what's something that we could do? Maybe it makes sense to get more like the agenda is only being set by one person. How can what's an implementation that we can try to fix that problem? Yeah.
We could have. Oh, okay. We could have the president make the agenda with a different member every week.
That's great. Okay, so that the example was we could have the president co-create the agenda with a different member of the community every week. So that's one potential implementation. Was there another one over here?
Have people submit their agenda questions.
Okay, we could have an agenda that's open for anyone to edit. Okay, great. So as as the trusted totalitarian facilitator, I'm going to go with, because there was 2 people that kind of had the same idea, we're going to go with, have an open agenda. Who's gonna bottom line that? Can someone raise their hand to make sure that there's that the agenda is shared out, that everyone can just pretend like you're great. Okay, perfect. Jesse, you'll do it. Nice. Thanks for volunteering. Okay, fast forward 1 week. Boom. Hey everybody, cool. So, how has this has this been working? Jesse, were you able to make the agenda? Did people feel like they got their things on the agenda?
Yeah, we did.
Cool, great. So that's going well. Or no, it didn't work at all. That stunk. Yeah. All right. Yeah, I'm losing my cool. We're out of time. It's over, and I have left no time for questions.
Where'd you steal it from?
I stole it from Agile Learning Centers. Okay. I will put this. Oh, here's something we can do. Does someone have a piece of paper and a pen? Okay. Can you make a thing that has name and email, and I will write up an explanation of how this works. I'll create a blog post in 3 to 7 days, and I will email you detailed, illustrated instructions on how this tool works. That's what I'll do for you, and then in exchange, you'll do awesome at. Can I also steal your pen for a little while? Thank you. All right. So come, put your name, and then if you have a question, put your name and email if you want me to email you and send you funny cat videos. Just kidding. Put your name down, and then if you want, you can ask a question, and I'll kind of answer it up here. Do you need to take the mics away?
No. I have a comment, actually.
Great. Yeah.
Just how many of you know the Internet Engineering Task Force? You heard of that? Yeah. So, they came up with a system which is the request for comments, not really relates to this, but the RFC system where you post a request for comment and people then can comment on it. And when they come to the meetings, how they get consensus is they all hum in the room. If you know that. And that's how the internet is made, is by people humming or not.
Awesome. Oh, I love it. I've also heard of a form of consensus called enthusiastic consent. And this is in the dating world, you might have heard this term, enthusiastic consent. It's great. But there's also sort of an idea of like, oh, here's this idea. Everyone has to actually consent to it enthusiastically. Like you have to be like, yeah, we're all super jazzed about that. Of course we want to do that. And so if someone's like, yeah, then it doesn't pass. Like you have to have everyone super into it.
That would never work in Sweden.
No one's enthusiastic.